listener production.
Hi, Simon Beaton here with this briefing. Once upon a time, dairy milk was widely held as an irreplaceable part of a balanced diet. How could bones possibly stay strong without all that milky calcium? But now, our relationship with dairy milk is more complicated and we're drinking less of it. From 2012 to 2022 in Australia, our average annual milk consumption per person has dropped from 106 litres down to 93. And if you look at the US, this becomes even more dramatic. In 1945, the average person was drinking 170 litres each year. As of 2021, it was just 60. So why? Is it because we're now more aware that 65% of us are lactose intolerant? Is it due to fears about the environmental impacts of dairy farming or the welfare of the animals? Or is it because we now have so many dairy milk alternatives right at our fingertips with oat, almond, soy, rice, coconut, cashew, even hemp milk, all competing for our attention on the supermarket shelf? What's the bottom line? Are we right to be moving away from dairy? Farmer, author and expert on milk, Matthew Evans, joins us today. Matthew, is dairy milk good for us?
I'll ask the small questions first. Look, Simon, it can be, yes. Look, it has amazing stuff in it, and it's done humanity great good. It's probably doing most people good in some form or another. But not everybody can consume it in its entirety, and some people do have intolerances or even allergies to dairy, so they probably shouldn't have it.
So why then, as a society, are we consuming less milk now than we did, say, a decade ago?
Well, I think partly is because we started to consume way more milk than we had probably historically. So it had reached a real peak. And I think there's also trends. We've sort of gone away from milk a little bit because we've been told, there's something maybe better for the environment, or there's something that doesn't hurt animals, or there's something that is supposedly better for you. So there's a bit of trend in there as well.
Now, you mentioned lactose intolerance, and this is about 65% of all adult humans. Surely dairy milk isn't so good if you're lactose intolerant?
Yeah, that was the really interesting thing. I had no clue that many people in the world were lactose intolerant. So lactose is the main milk sugar. And if you're lactose intolerant, it means you can't digest lactose in its entirety as an adult. So pretty much everybody when they're born can digest lactose because that's the main milk sugar in our mother's milk. But what happens is you get to the age of weaning, and typically most mammals lose that ability. For some reason, a third of humans have developed the ability to digest it. What the science says is pretty clear. You can consume some fresh milk that has lactose in it, in fact, up to a cup a day, even if you're lactose intolerant, and you'll absorb all the good things, all the calciums, the vitamins, the minerals, the really good fats, the complete proteins in the milk. But if you consume more than that, it's a problem. And then also we can ferment the lactose out. So we can make yogurt, which only has half the lactose. We can make hard cheese, which has no lactose, and still get all the benefits of what dairy has in it. So humanity, like 3/4 of the world's population, get a substantial part of their nutrition from dairy, even though only a third can digest milk in its entirety. So it's a weird anomaly, but it seems that milk does us great good, and we're willing to work with it to get what we want out of it.
So how come people who are lactose intolerant, how can they still process 1 cup of milk every day?
So what happens with lactose intolerance, you stop making an enzyme called lactase that converts lactose into sugars that we can digest. So the people who lack that ability, genetic ability, can digest some lactose because of the bacteria in our body, the lactobacillus, so the same sort of broad grouping of bacteria that you get in yogurts. There should be some of those in our body, so they can do a bit of digesting of lactose. And then the lactose isn't so dominant that it stops us absorbing everything else. It's only when it gets to a certain point that our body starts to, and anyone who's lactose intolerant will know you drink 2 cups of milk and you might get a runny tummy, you might even get, bloating, you might get even constipation, can be symptoms of lactose intolerance. But the science is pretty clear. You can have up to a cup a day, and I wouldn't suggest having a cup at once of fresh milk, like runny, liquid milk, without symptoms. But if you are lactose intolerant, you can, as I said before, you can try yogurts or cheeses or even take lactase tablets. Some people, because they want to have a big milkshake, they'll take a lactase tablet to be able to digest it. Yeah, it's funny.
All right, so let's turn now to milk alternatives. There's oat milk, almond milk, soy, rice, cashew. There's so many. And they seem to ever be expanding these different options that we have and growing in popularity. How do these compare in the health benefits to plain old dairy?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. They sort of have this halo of goodness around them if you look at the marketing. And I guess most of them market themselves as being not milk. That's about the best thing you can say about them. Look, they don't apart from soy milk, they have like a fraction, like a sixth or a fifth of the protein of milk. So they don't really provide protein in any great level. Soy has a decent amount of protein, but it's not complete protein like dairy. Look, most of them, I would classify them nutritionally as either doing you very little good or potentially harm, especially if they've got emulsifiers in them.
Harm?
Yeah, well, like emulsifiers, we know that emulsifiers are bad for gut health, which means bad for brain health, bad for your microbiome, the things that live in and on you that are really important for your, not only your digestion, but for your immunity and your brain health. Plant milks are what we call ultra-processed foods. So they're stuff that can only come from a factory. Now, if you're at home and you're making oat milk and you're making soy milk or you're making almond milk, that's very different from the stuff that comes in a Tetra Pak, an unrecyclable Tetra Pak, which is long life, which is pretty much every plant milk on the market. They're what we call ultra-processed food. And in simplest way to explain that is our body doesn't really recognize ultra-processed food, stuff that comes from factories, as food. So it's not very good at absorbing stuff from it. It's not in a form that our body recognizes historically. So, for instance, there's lots of calcium in some of these plant milks, but it's not very bioavailable. It's not very available to your body. So for a single glass of milk, to get the same calcium out of, say, oat milk, you need something like 7 glasses of oat milk. You need 22 glasses of soy milk to get the same amount of calcium.
Wow.
And, I don't know anyone who wants to drink 22 glasses of soy milk. So that's the sort of level you're looking at. Some of the almond milks are 2% almond, 7% almond. Like if you want the benefits of almonds, eat almonds. You want the benefits of oats. And I love, the benefits of oats, just had a big bowl of them. That's where you get your nutrition. But once you take it and extract all the stuff, put it through a factory, you're not getting that food in the best form that is for your body.
Going back to dairy milk, that's also copped a lot of negative press for both the high environmental impact and the ethical treatment of cows. Is there truth to a lot of this?
Yeah, look, there is a grain of truth, and I think the dairy industry's lost some of its social license through its intensification, through some of the things that they do in terms of animal welfare and how they look after the environment. To give you an example, a lot of our butter and milk dairy products in Australia, not our fresh milk, but it comes from New Zealand. Now, New Zealand has a massive dairy industry, and they're using lots of fertiliser and they're putting lots of cows on land. And they've found that 2/3 of their rivers are unswimmable because of the amount of nitrogen that's essentially polluting the rivers. So they've got an issue because they've got too many cows in one place. Dairy can be a very sustainable thing. It can actually regenerate landscapes. It can be done really well. But you can also have the world's biggest dairy farm in China, 100,000 cows. They all live inside. They all eat grain and never get to go outside and do what a cow is designed to do, which is eat fresh grass, which is what the image you and I have in our head. So dairies can be everything from really great and wonderful for the planet and really bad.
From that side then, is it perhaps better to be going for a milk alternative compared to dairy?
I think the way to look at the milk alternatives is they do nothing for you nutritionally. So they only have a cost to the environment. So if we look at food, and look, I'm a fan of ultra-processed food. I love a Tim Tam, but I don't look at that as doing anything for my body, if anything, doing me harm. You have to look at plant milks as that. So whatever they do to the environment is something they do to the environment which gives you no nutritional benefit. So you're still going to have to eat something that gives you the calcium or the magnesium or the phosphorus or the vitamin D or whatever. You're still going to have to eat something that's come from a farm on top of your plant milk. So you can't it's not a direct comparison when you compare like land use or water use or anything like that. And I think that's where the mistake comes. And just really quickly, one example of this is, and how we can see this in the real world, is in the UK. Research came out earlier this year. In the UK, they found that hospitalizations, people put into hospital for vitamin deficiency, tripled in a decade. And the researchers lay the blame squarely at the foot of plant milks as a part of that. So this is real world implications. And to be honest, most of these people are women of childbearing age, so a very vulnerable time of life and when your body needs a lot of stuff. And so we're already seeing the ramifications. So I'm not saying you should drink milk. I'm not saying you should have dairy. No, I think they're really good for me. And, I don't have any intolerances or allergies to them. I find them gastronomically wonderful. Comparing margarine to butter is like no comparison, or vegan cheese to cheese. But if you don't want to have them, that's fine. But don't look at these alternatives as replacing the nutrition you would get in our normal cultural diet that Australians are used to eating.
That's really interesting. So, all right, let's say that I am going to have dairy milk. I made that choice. Is there a health benefit if I go for the expensive milk on the shelf versus the cheap $2 or whatever it is carton that's there?
Yeah, probably there is. So something that comes from an organic farm, which has fed more green stuff rather than dried things like hay and grain, has a better fat profile. It has a better composition overall. So it has things in there that are doing you more good. If it has cream on it, full cream is better. It's just everything is absorbed better into your body, and it's only 3.5% fat. So it's not exactly a lot of fat. So full cream, and ideally unhomogenized, the one with the cream on the top. Because what happens, everything we do to milk, just as everything we do to the plant's milks, but milk gets homogenized or pumped through different pipes or treated differently. And every time you do that, you lose some of the value, some of the benefit that milk does us and dairy does us. So that the least treated, the least processed, the least it's traveled, the better.
So one final question for you then, Matt. Being so well informed across everything in this entire milk world, what's the one largest change that needs to happen in our dairy milk industry?
There are things in milk that are designed not just to feed us, but to feed our microbiome. They affect the very way our DNA behaves. So I think the most important thing is to recognise that it's a living product that has comes from a living animal and from a living ecosystem and has a very big impact on us as living beings, and give it the respect it deserves.
Sounds pretty good to me. Thank you so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Simon.
That was Matthew Evans, farmer and author of a recently released book analysing everything there is to know about milk. It's titled Milk. Thanks for listening to today's briefing. That's it for now. Before you go, though, we'd love it if you could share this ep with someone you think might enjoy it. And if you want to keep up with our other content, you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast, and on TikTok and YouTube, search Listener Newsroom. That's LISTNR. I'm Simon Beaton. See you next time.
Listener.